Welcome back to the deep dive. You sit down, you've got that big project, the one that really needs your brain firing on all cylinders. And maybe 30 minutes later, you realize, wait, I've checked email 5 times, scrolled some headlines, maybe even started planning a vacation. Sound familiar?
Uh-huh. That feeling is, well, it's almost universal now, isn't it? The constant pull of distraction.
Exactly. So today we're tackling what might just be the ultimate competitive advantage in, well, the 21st century economy, the ability to actually focus intensely. We're asking, how do we pull our attention back from, that sludge of constant distraction? And, maybe more importantly, why does it even matter? Economically, sure, but personally, too.
Now, we're going to start this deep dive somewhere maybe a bit unexpected. Switzerland, back in 1922. We're talking about Carl Jung, the psychoanalyst. He'd just split with Sigmund Freud, a huge deal at the time. And he was working like crazy to really define his own system, what became analytical psychology. This wasn't just scribbling notes. It was high-stakes thinking. It had to be sharp, careful, original.
Right, he's going up against Freud, basically. Needs his A game. So what does he do? Does he, rent a fancy office?
Not quite. He starts building something.
Yeah.
A place he called the Bolgen Tower, right there near Lake Zurich.
A tower. Okay, tell me more.
Well, this tower, it became his sanctuary, his place for pure concentration. And he designed his whole routine around it. Strict 2 hours of totally undistracted writing time. Private office, and get this, no electricity, just oil lamps. Then he'd do manual chores, meditate, take these long walks to think.
Wow. So no email notifications there, huh? But the key thing you mentioned, this wasn't like a retirement project.
Absolutely not. That's crucial. He built the tower specifically to push his professional work forward, to generate those groundbreaking ideas that could stand up to Freud's influence. He literally engineered isolation to achieve peak intellectual performance.
That deliberate act, building a whole structure just for focus, that perfectly sets up what we're really talking about today, doesn't it?
It really does. It's the perfect illustration of what the source material calls deep work.
Okay, let's nail down these definitions then, because they're sort of the bedrock for everything else. Two main ideas on the table. First up, deep work, or DW. So DW is what? It's professional stuff, done when you're totally distraction-free, concentration maxed out, pushing your brain to its absolute limit.
Exactly. And the key outcome. These efforts create new value. They genuinely improve your skills. And crucially, they're hard for other people to just copy. Think breakthroughs, complex problem solving, high-level creativity.
Got it. Deep work equals value creation, skill building, hard to replicate. Now, what's the flip side?
The flip side is its sneaky cousin, shallow work, or SW. These are the tasks that honestly don't demand much brain power. Logistical stuff often done while you're, frankly, distracted.
Like constantly juggling that overflowing inbox, setting up routine meetings, quick emails back and forth, data entry, that sort of thing.
Precisely. Those tasks feel busy, maybe even productive in the moment, but they tend not to create much lasting, unique value. And the kicker, they're usually pretty easy for someone else to do, easy to replicate.
And these shallow tasks, they're everywhere, aren't they? I remember seeing a McKinsey study, maybe from 2012, that was just staggering.
Oh, yeah. What did it find?
It said the average knowledge worker was spending something like 60% of their work week just on electronic communication and basic internet searching.
60%. Wow. That's kind of horrifying when you think about it.
It really is. We're spending the bulk of our prime working hours on the least valuable stuff. It's like we're drowning in shallows.
And that creates this cognitive drag, right,
Yeah.
across the entire economy. So our mission today, for you listening, is to really understand why deep work is being called, the superpower of the 21st century.
And not just why, but how you can actually start reclaiming your own focus. How to pull yourself out of that constant state of frazzled shallowness and get back to doing work that truly matters.
And Jung wasn't some weird outlier. This idea of needing isolation for significant work, it pops up again and again throughout history.
Yeah, the source material we looked at brings up others, like Michel de Montaigne, back in the 16th century.
Right, the philosopher. He basically locked himself away in his private library tower. Avoided almost everyone, just needed that space to think and write his essays.
And Mark Twain, didn't he have some special writing spot too?
He did. An isolated shed. Apparently so far from the main house that his family had to blow a horn when it's time for meals. He wrote Tom Sawyer there, among other things.
Blowing a horn. Okay, so these aren't just like quirky habits of famous people. They're deliberate systems designed to protect the core work.
Exactly. Systems built to shield their concentration. And you see it right up into the modern era. Think about Woody Allen.
Oh, yeah, the typewriter guy. 44 films in 44 years, all on a manual typewriter, no computer.
Done. He explicitly rejected computers, especially networked ones. He saw them even back then as basically attention black holes. For him, the deep, focused act of writing on that old Olympia was more important than any perceived tech convenience. He stuck with what protected his focus for decades.
That's commitment. And then there's Bill Gates, right? With his Think Weeks.
Legendary. Twice a year, total isolation, often a lakeside cottage, no calls, no email, just reading stacks of papers and books and thinking big picture strategy.
And this wasn't downtime. This was serious work time.
Absolutely. That deep immersion is what led to things like his famous 1995 Internet tidal wave memo. That memo fundamentally shifted Microsoft's entire strategy. It came directly from protected deep thinking.
Okay, so the pattern is clear. Isolation often fuels high-level output. But why is deep work becoming so incredibly valuable now in our current economy? The sources point to two main drivers, right?
Yeah, two big ones that are really amplifying the rewards for people who can actually concentrate. The first is simply the ability to quickly master complicated things.
Meaning?
Well, think about the modern economy. It runs on complex systems, algorithms, new coding languages popping up all the time, advanced analytics, specialized research. These things change fast. So if you can't go deep, if you can't concentrate intensely to learn and synthesize this complex new information quickly, you just fall behind. It's not about raw intelligence necessarily. It's about the ability to learn hard things fast. And that requires depth.
Right. If you're constantly distracted, you can't absorb complex stuff effectively. Makes sense. What's the second driver?
The second one is the ability to produce at an elite level. Elite in both quality and speed.
Why elite?
Because the internet, the digital revolution, it's created this massive global marketplace. If you're truly world-class at something, the best in your field, you can reach almost anyone, anywhere. The rewards for being the very top are astronomical.
That's the flip side.
The flip side is, if your work is just,
Okay.
mediocre.
Yeah.
The barriers for someone else to offer something similar, maybe even better, maybe for free, are basically zero. Your audience, your clients, they can find an alternative with a quick search.
So good enough isn't good enough anymore. You have to be producing the absolute best you're capable of.
Exactly. And the best stuff, the truly outstanding work, it always comes from pushing your cognitive limits, which, by definition, is deep work.
There's a really powerful story in the source material that illustrates this perfectly. A guy named Jason Ban.
Ah, yes, the financial consultant. Started out making around $40,000 a year.
Yeah, and his job mostly involved creating these reports. Lots of manual data crunching in Excel. Hours and hours of it.
Until he had that light bulb moment. He realized that most of what he did, the core of his job, could actually be automated. By a fairly simple Excel macro, he called it a kludged-together script.
Ouch. Realizing your job is basically replaceable by a script. That's gotta sting.
For sure. But it was also clarifying. He saw his work was low value, easily replicable, hence the $40K salary. He knew he needed to pivot to something harder, something high value. He chose computer programming.
Okay, smart move. But there was a catch, right? A big one for him personally.
A huge one. He admitted he was basically addicted to the internet, said he spent 98% of his time just surfing the web at his old job, clicking around, constantly distracted.
Relatable, sadly. And learning to code. That requires the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Intense, sustained focus.
Deep work. Something he hadn't really cultivated. So his solution was, well, pretty drastic.
What did he do? Build his own tower?
Kind of. He essentially locked himself in a room for 2 whole months. No computer, no internet access at all. Just textbooks, note cards, and a highlighter.
Wow, cold turkey.
Total immersion. He forced himself into intense, uninterrupted study. Read 18 books on coding theory and practice. He gave himself absolutely no escape route back to shallowness.
And the outcome? Did it work?
It absolutely validates the whole economic argument. He didn't just scrape by. He crushed it at this really tough programming boot camp, dev boot camp, graduated top of his class.
And the job?
Immediately landed a developer position in San Francisco, paying $100,000 a year, more than double his old salary.
Incredible. From $40K replaceable to $100K, high demand skill, basically overnight. All because he figured out how to force himself into deep work.
Exactly. He learned a hard skill fast, solely through cultivating intense focus. It really highlights the mechanism here.
Yeah.
Which brings us to that core formula.
Right. The formula for elite productivity, it's simple but powerful. High quality work produced equals.
Equals time spent multiplied by intensity of focus.
Yeah.
Time spent X, intensity of focus.
And the intensity of focuses part is the key variable most people neglect, right? We always think about putting in more hours, more time spent.
Precisely. But this formula shows that doubling your intensity can be just as or even more effective than doubling your time, which leads us to Professor Adam Grant.
Ah, the Wharton professor, youngest full professor there, super productive. How did he leverage intensity?
His approach was brilliant. He used batching. He crammed all his teaching duties into one intense semester.
Okay, freeing up the rest of the year.
Exactly. The rest of the year was purely for research.
Mm.
But even then, he didn't just work constantly. He'd alternate periods where his door was open with these short, super intense monastic stretches, like 3 or 4 days completely isolated.
Even when he was physically in the office.
Yep. He'd set up an aggressive out-of-office autoresponder saying he was totally unreachable, signaling zero tolerance for interruption during those deep dives. He maximized intensity during relatively short bursts, minimizing the total time needed.
So why does that intensity matter so much? This is where that psychological concept comes in.
Attention residue. That's the term coined by business professor Sophie Leroy.
Right. Attention residue. Explain that again.
Okay, so imagine you're working on task A, something complex like writing a report. Then you quickly switch to task B, maybe checking a quick email.
Happens all the time.
Right. Leroy found that when you switch back to task A part of your attention, a residue, remains stuck thinking about task B. Especially if task B was, say, an email you didn't fully resolve.
So even a quick glance at the inbox leaves a mark.
A significant one. Her research showed that the switch away from the deep task is bad. But the real killer is switching to something like an inbox with multiple unfinished threads. Even if you only spend 30 seconds there, checking a few emails.
Uh-oh.
When you switch back to your main project, your brain is still subconsciously processing those unresolved emails in the background, trying to formulate replies, figure out what they mean. That residue lingers.
So you're not really fully back on task. Your cognitive engine isn't running at full speed.
Exactly. You might be operating at, say, only 70% cognitive capacity for the next 10, 15 minutes, maybe even longer, just because of that lingering attention residue from the quick, shallow check-in.
Wow. That explains why checking email just for a second can derail you for so much longer.
Precisely. To produce truly peak-level work, you need those long, uninterrupted stretches. Enough time for that residue to completely evaporate, allowing you to hit 100% focus on the single task at hand. Adam Grant's method worked because he drastically minimized those costly context switches.
Okay, so we've hammered this home. Deep work is incredibly valuable, critical for success, for learning hard things, for producing elite work. So why is it so rare? Why do modern offices, modern work culture seem almost designed to prevent it? Open offices, constant pings, pressure to be on Slack 24/7, mandatory social media. It feels like everything pushes against deep focus. It's a huge paradox.
It really is. And the root cause, according to the source material, is something called the metric black hole.
Metric black hole sounds ominous.
It kind of is. As knowledge work gets more complex, figuring out the actual value of someone's intellectual contribution becomes really, really difficult to measure objectively.
Unlike, say, making widgets on an assembly line where you can count the output.
Exactly. We can measure shallow work easily, like that CTO you mentioned, Tom Cochran. He could count that he got 511 emails and sent 284 in 1 week. He calculated that was 1.5 hours a day just shuffling information.
Okay, that's quantifiable activity. Busyness.
Right. But what we can't easily measure is the value of the innovative idea he didn't have, or the complex problem he didn't solve, because he spent those 1.5 hours managing his inbox instead of thinking deeply. The impact of deep work is often invisible in the short term.
The metrics are just fuzzy or non-existent.
And that fuzziness, that black hole where clear metrics should be, allows some really irrational things to happen in organizations.
Like what?
Like if a company can't easily connect a day spent just thinking or coding quietly to the actual bottom line, then any activity that looks busy or productive starts to seem more valuable, even if it isn't.
Ah, so visibility becomes more important than actual value creation.
Often, yes. And in that environment, deep work suffers precisely because it's often quiet, solitary, and doesn't look like frantic activity. This leads directly to the next problem.
Which is?
The principle of least resistance. Basically, human nature.
Meaning we're lazy.
Well, deep work is hard. It takes serious mental effort, discipline, willpower. Shallow work, on the other hand, checking email, attending a routine meeting, forwarding a link, That's easy.
Feels effortless, almost automatic sometimes.
Exactly. So when you don't have clear goals or metrics pushing you towards the hard, valuable stuff, deep work, what do most people do?
They drift towards the easy stuff, the path of least resistance.
Precisely. They fall back on shallow activities because they're simpler, less demanding, and importantly, they often feel productive even if they aren't contributing much real value.
We see these behaviors everywhere, don't we? Like trying to manage your whole day just by reacting to whatever lands in your
It's
inbox.
a classic example. It feels incredibly responsive. You're carrying messages, firing off replies, very satisfying in the moment, but you're fundamentally letting other people's agendas dictate your entire workday, not focusing on your own high-priority, deep tasks.
Or the endless cycle of recurring meetings. Often feel like they could have been an email, but they fill up the calendar.
Right. Meetings become a kind of default organizational tool.
Yeah.
Easy to schedule, looks like collaboration, but often just fragments everyone's day and prevents any sustained focus.
And what about that email forward with just thoughts tacked on? Drives me crazy.
Oh, the worst. Takes us under 2 seconds. But it offloads all the cognitive work onto the recipients. They have to spend minutes, maybe hours, figuring out the context, what's being asked, and then formulating a proper response. It's the epitome of low effort, high cost to others, shallow work.
And because the real value is hard to measure, this visible activity, this busyness, starts to stand in for actual productivity.
Exactly. Busyness is a proxy for productivity. This is where knowledge work really differs from, say, academia.
Yeah.
Many academics have clearer metrics. Think of the H-index in computer science. It measures publications and citations.
So they know it actually counts.
Right, which is why someone like Richard Feynman, the Nobel Prize winner, could actively avoid committees and admin tasks. He famously cultivated this reputation for being actively irresponsible because he knew his real job, the thing he was measured on, was deep theoretical work. He protected that time fiercely.
But in the corporate world, without those clear metrics, it gets confusing.
Very confusing. And that's where you get situations like Marissa Mayer when she was CEO of Yahoo. She banned working from home, remember, apparently after checking the VPN logs.
Yeah, I remember that. The justification was.
The underlying message seemed to be, if I can't see you being busy, if you're not logged in at the expected times, I'll assume you're not productive.
Which is just wrong, based on everything we
It's
discussed.
totally wrong.
Yeah.
It fundamentally misunderstands where value comes from in knowledge work. As we saw with Adam Grant, maximum value often requires being invisible, isolated, deep in thought. Mayer's move prioritized visible activity over actual output, a classic symptom of the metric black hole fostering bad decisions.
There's another cultural force at play here, too, isn't there? Something about our relationship with technology itself.
Absolutely. The source material calls it the cult of the internet, borrowing from Neil Postman's idea of a technopoly.
Technopoly, what's that?
It's when a society basically assumes that any new technology, especially high-tech stuff, is automatically good, inherently valuable, beyond question.
And this assumption makes any alternative seem backward, irrelevant.
Exactly. It makes deep, focused work, which often requires disconnecting or using older, simpler tools, seem invisible and therefore irrelevant, as Postman put it. Critic Evgeny Morozov nails this too. He points out how the internet stops being just a tool and becomes this ideology. It's worshipped as a symbol of progress, whether or not the specific application actually helps achieve anything meaningful.
You see this absurdity play out, right? Like the example of Alyssa Rubin, the New York Times journalist.
Yeah, a serious foreign correspondent, bureau chief in Paris. Her entire value comes from deep, difficult, dangerous reporting on the ground, finding stories no one else has. And yet, she's pressured to be active on Twitter, to provide constant, free, shallow updates. Why? Just because it involves the internet. It seems normal in our culture, even though it directly takes time and focus away from her actual high-value work.
It's completely backward when you think about it through the deep work lens.
Totally. Or the ultimate example, that refrigerated trucking company putting "like us" on Facebook, stickers on their big rigs.
Ah, right. Like someone needing critical temperature-controlled logistics is going to choose their shipper based on Facebook likes.
It's ludicrous.
Mm-hmm.
But it happens because the idea of using the latest internet thing feels mandatory, regardless of relevance to the core business.
So deep work struggles because it relies on these almost old-fashioned ideas like patience, craftsmanship, quality over quantity, and it often requires saying no to the shiny new tech.
Precisely. And in a technopoly, rejecting the new and high-tech can feel like rejecting progress itself, even if that rejection is exactly what's needed to do the work that truly matters. Okay, so we've established the economic case. Deep work makes you valuable, helps you learn, helps you produce elite stuff. But the benefits go way beyond the paycheck, right? It's about, well, a more meaningful life.
Yeah, the sources really emphasize this. It's not just about optimizing output, it's about the quality of the experience itself. There's that great analogy with craftsmanship.
Right, the blacksmith, Rick Furr, he's recreating this incredibly complex Viking-era sword. Not something you just bang out.
No, it requires intense focus, meticulous control for hours on end. The description of him working the metal, it sounds incredibly demanding. One tiny mistake, one lapse in concentration, and potentially days of work are ruined.
Exactly. And listen to how he describes the process itself. Working the ingot, heating it, hammering it. He says you have to nudge it, slowly it breaks down, then you start to enjoy it.
Then you start to enjoy it. That's the key phrase.
It is that deep immersion, stretching your skill and concentration to the absolute limit to create something difficult and tangible. It generates this profound sense of satisfaction. He doesn't need the sword for survival, but the process of making it, the deep engagement itself, is incredibly rewarding.
And that feeling, that satisfaction from deep immersion, it's obvious in physical crafts, but the argument is we need to find it, or rather cultivate it, in knowledge work too.
Precisely. That moment Furrer talks about where the struggle gives way to enjoyment, that's your brain deeply engaged, which connects directly to the neurological argument for depth.
This comes from Winifred Gallagher, the science writer.
Yes. Her work, and especially her own personal experience facing a scary cancer diagnosis, led her to a powerful realization.
Which was?
That our subjective experience of reality, our entire worldview, is fundamentally shaped by what we choose to pay attention to.
Our brain builds our world based on our focus.
Exactly. Facing her illness, she made a conscious choice to focus her attention on the good things still present in her life walks, martinis with friends, reading, movies, and despite the grim diagnosis, her experience of life remained largely positive, because that's where her attention was directed.
Okay, I see the connection to work now. If you spend your work hours flitting between shallow tasks, emails, notifications,
Your brain constructs a reality of fragmentation, irritation, and low-level anxiety. But if you dedicate significant stretches of time to focused, meaningful, deep work,
your brain interprets your working life as being rich, important, engaging. Deep work literally shapes your perception of your job's value.
and there's a hidden benefit too, intense concentration kinda, hijacks your attention system.
Hijacks it how?
It focuses your mental spotlight so tightly on the deep task that you simply don't have the bandwidth to notice all the many smaller and less pleasant things
Yeah.
that are always buzzing around the periphery of life. The minor annoyances, the office drama, the background worries.
So deep focus acts like a shield against negativity.
In a way, yes. If you let your attention just drift across the surface, constantly checking the inbox, dealing with trivial requests, your mind inevitably constructs a work experience dominated by stress, irritation, frustration, and triviality. Deep work prevents that by focusing your attention on something challenging and worthwhile instead.
It crowds out the negative noise. An idle mind, or maybe a shallow mind, focuses on problems. A deeply engaged mind focuses on the task.
Beautifully put. And this ties into the final piece, the psychological argument for depth, which comes largely from the work of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi.
Ah, the flow guy, with the unpronounceable name.
Light chuckle, that's the one. He pioneered those experience sampling method studies, ESM. He'd basically ping people randomly throughout their day.
Beepers, right, back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. And ask them what they were doing and how they were feeling right at that moment to build a real-time map of happiness and engagement.
And the big surprise finding was,
People consistently reported being happier, more fulfilled, more engaged when they were at work tackling challenging tasks than they were during their leisure time, like watching TV or just relaxing.
really, happier at work than chilling out. Seems counterintuitive.
It does, but his explanation makes sense. He found that the best moments usually occur when a person's body or mind is stretched to its limits in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile. That feeling, that's what he termed flow.
The state of being completely absorbed, energized focus, losing track of time, the activity becoming its own reward.
That's flow. And deep work, it's practically designed to induce flow. It demands that intense concentration. It pushes your limits. It's a voluntary effort towards something worthwhile.
So engaging in deep work isn't just about being productive. It's literally a pathway to experiencing more flow and therefore more happiness and satisfaction in your work life.
Exactly. Flow brings order to consciousness. It channels your mental energy purposefully. And that ordering, that focused engagement, is intrinsically rewarding for humans. It confirms that striving, stretching ourselves, engaging deeply, that's not just good for the economy, it's good for the soul.
Okay, so we're sold. Deep work is valuable, deep work meaningful. But knowing that isn't enough, right? We need practical ways to actually do it. How do we build this habit?
Right. Because good intentions aren't going to cut it. The key insight here is that willpower is a finite resource. You can't just decide to focus harder all the time.
Yeah, those studies you mentioned earlier, like Hoffman and Baumeister's, showing that wanting to check email or just take a break from hard work are huge willpower drains.
Exactly. That are among the desires we struggle most to resist.
Right.
So relying on sheer willpower to fight distraction hour after hour, that's a losing battle. You need structure. You need routines and rituals.
Minimize the willpower needed. Got it. So rule number one from the source material is deciding on a depth philosophy. Basically, how are you going to schedule this stuff?
Yes. And the crucial point is you must schedule it. Trying to fit deep work in whenever you have free time simply doesn't work. That free time will always get eaten by shallow demands. You need a deliberate approach.
Okay, what are the main options? The source mentions a couple.
The two big ones are the bimodal approach and the journalistic approach.
Let's start with bimodal. What's that look like?
Think Carl Jung. You divide your time into distinct, long chunks. Some chunks, maybe days or even weeks, are dedicated monastically to deep work. Total isolation, zero distractions.
So like going to the Bullenin Tower.
Exactly. And then the other chunks of your time are deliberately open and available for shallow work, meetings, communication. Jung's life in Zurich versus his time at the tower. Adam Grant did a version of this too, right?
Yeah, with his teaching semester versus his research semester, and those mini 3-4 day monastic deep dives within the research periods.
Right. It's about clear separation. You're either fully deep or fully shallow available.
Okay, the bimodal approach sounds amazing in theory. A dedicated retreat for deep thinking. But let's be real, how many people can actually pull that off? Locking yourself away for days or weeks.
That's the major challenge. It requires a significant amount of autonomy in your job.
Hmm.
And even if you can manage the isolation, there's the logistical headache. What happens to all the emails, the requests, the admin stuff
Yeah.
that piles up while you're deep?
Right, you emerge from your tower to an avalanche.
Exactly. So bimodal requires not just the deep period, but also a really well-planned shallow burst immediately after, just to catch up and clear the decks. Otherwise, the whole system collapses.
Okay, so bimodal, powerful, but maybe not practical for everyone. What's the alternative? The journalistic approach.
Yes, this is more about fitting deep work into the gaps of your existing schedule whenever you find a free hour, or even just 20 minutes. Like a journalist on assignment finding pockets of time to write their story between interviews or events.
The example was Walter Isaacson, the biographer, writing intensely for short bursts while on a family beach vacation.
Right? He'd just disappear for maybe an hour. You'd hear the typewriter going furiously. Then he'd come back totally relaxed.
That sounds much more flexible. You don't need to block out whole days. But it also sounds harder.
Much harder in some ways. It requires an incredible ability to switch contexts rapidly and dive into deep focus almost instantly without much warm-up. You need real confidence in your ability to concentrate.
And if you're still struggling with that attention residue we talked about, jumping between shallow and deep constantly.
Then the journalistic approach can be a disaster. Your deep work blocks just become fragmented, low-intensity messes because you never fully shake off the residue from the previous task or the upcoming meeting. For beginners, it's probably not the best starting point.
So rule one is, pick a scheduling philosophy, bimodal or journalistic, that actually fits your job, your life, and critically, your current ability to focus. Don't try to be Walter Isaacson on day one if you're easily distracted.
Exactly. Be realistic. Start with maybe a more structured, predictable schedule if you're new to this. Okay, rule 2. Training your focus work, like Teddy Roosevelt.
Teddy Roosevelt, what's the connection?
It goes back to his time at Harvard. He was famously involved in everything: boxing, dancing, natural history studies, social clubs, just an insane range of activities.
Sounds like he wouldn't have had any time to study.
You'd think. But he graduated with honors. And apparently he did it by studying only a fraction of the time his classmates did. Maybe just a few hours a day.
How? What was the secret?
Pure, unadulterated intensity. His method was schedule every single block of time meticulously. And then, during the scheduled study blocks, apply absolute, blistering intensity of focus. No distractions allowed.
Back to the formula. Time spent, X, intensity of focus. He minimized time spent by maximizing intensity.
Precisely. He proved that incredible output is possible in short bursts if the focus is absolute. But that level of intensity doesn't just happen, you need to train for it. Which brings us to concentration calisthenics.
Like exercises for your brain's focus muscle.
Essentially, yes. Remember Clifford Nass's research? He found that people who constantly multitask online, switching attention rapidly, they actually rewire their brains. They become mental wrecks, as he put it, chronically distractible, suckers for irrelevancy.
Scary. So how do we rewire it back?
We need to practice resisting distraction. We need to strengthen that focus muscle. And the strategy proposed is a bit counterintuitive.
Okay, hit me with it.
Don't take breaks from distraction. Take breaks from focus.
Wait, say that again? Don't take breaks from distraction.
Right. Think about how most people work. They try to focus, but then they take little breaks by checking email, social media, news headlines. Those are breaks filled with distraction.
Okay, yeah, that's standard.
Instead, the idea is to schedule specific, limited blocks of time for internet use, for those shallow distractions. Maybe 3 30-minute blocks spread through the day.
And outside of those scheduled distraction breaks,
You stay completely offline. No checking email just for a second. No quick glances at your phone. You treat the internet like it's unavailable, except during those scheduled windows.
and the calisthenics part is the struggle.
Exactly. When you're in an offline block and you feel that powerful urge to quickly check something online, and you will feel it, the act of resisting that urge, of consciously redirecting your attention back to your deep task, that's the workout.
Each successful resistance is like a rep at the gym for your focus muscle.
That's the idea.
Hmm.
You're actively strengthening your ability to control your attention by practicing saying no to distractions outside of their scheduled time. Over time, sustaining focus gets easier.
Okay, that makes sense. Rule 3. Being ruthless with tools the craftsman approach. This sounds like it's about managing technology.
Very much so. It's pushing back against what the source calls the any benefit mindset.
Any benefit.
That's the default thinking for many people. If a new tool, app, or platform offers any potential benefit, no matter how small or tangential, then you should probably adopt it. Because why not? It might be useful.
We see that everywhere. Fear of missing out, maybe. Gotta be
Yeah.
on the latest platform.
Right. But the craftsman approach flips this entirely. It says, adopt a new tool only if its positive impacts on your core goals, the things truly essential to your success and happiness, substantially outweigh its negative impacts.
Not just any benefit, but a substantial net positive impact on what really matters.
Exactly. It demands a much higher bar for adoption. Think about that farmer, Forrest Pritchard, and his hay baler.
Right, he had a baler, which obviously had benefits, save time baling his own hay.
Sure. But he looked deeper. He
Right.
realized his core goal was maximizing soil fertility and overall farm health. The time spent operating and maintaining the baler, the cost, the way it forced him into certain schedules, those were negative impacts.
And the time saved wasn't worth those downsides relative to his main goal.
Correct. The net benefit wasn't substantially positive for his core priorities. So he ruthlessly sold the baler and just started buying hay from a neighbor. It freed up his time and resources to focus on what truly mattered to soil.
So we need to apply that same tough calculus to our digital tools, like email, Slack, social media.
Absolutely. And the way to do that is by applying the law of the vital few, often called the 80-20 rule or Pareto principle.
Identify the small number of activities that produce the vast majority of your valuable results.
Yes. Figure out, what are the core 20% of activities that generate 80% of the value in your work? For someone like Michael Lewis or George Packer, acclaimed nonfiction writers.
That vital few is deep research, interviewing, structuring complex narratives, and careful, high-quality writing.
Exactly. Now, does spending time on Twitter substantially support those core activities?
Probably not. Maybe some tiny networking benefit, but hugely outweighed by the distraction, the context switching, the potential for shallow arguments.
Right. The negative impacts on their ability to do the deep work that actually defines their success are massive compared to any minor benefit. So they largely reject the tool. It fails the craftsman test for their core goals. You need to identify your vital few and judge every tool against that standard.
Be a craftsman, not just a collector of shiny digital objects.
Ah.
Okay, last rule, rule 4. Draining the shallows, quantifying and capping shallow work. This sounds like actively fighting back against all that low-value stuff.
It is. You've trained your focus, you've chosen your tools wisely. Now you need systems to minimize the unavoidable shallow work that still exists.
How do we do that? One technique mentioned is time management method, or time blocking.
Yes, this means scheduling every minute of your workday. You create blocks for specific tasks, yes, but also blocks for lunch, for buffer time between meetings, even for relaxation or email processing.
Every minute. That sounds intense, rigid.
The goal isn't actually to follow the schedule perfectly down to the second. Things will always change. The real value is that the process forces you to constantly confront how you're spending your finite time.
Because you have to decide what goes into each block.
Exactly. If something unexpected comes up, you don't just react. You look at your blocked out schedule and consciously decide, okay, what am I not going to do now to make space for this? What makes the most sense for me to do with the time that remains? It forces deliberate trade-offs.
It makes the opportunity cost visible.
Okay, but how do you decide what deserves a big block deep versus a small block shallow? Sometimes it feels ambiguous.
That's where the quantified depth thought experiment comes in. It's a simple but effective way to clarify.
Does it work?
For any given task on your plate, ask yourself, how long in months would it take to train a smart, recent college graduate with no specialized background in my field to be able to complete this task successfully? Okay, interesting metric. So, if the answer is years, learning the skills to properly edit a complex scientific paper or design a key piece of software.
That's deep work. It requires significant, hard-won expertise.
But if the answer is just a few weeks or months, like learning to create a standard sales presentation, organize a recurring project update meeting, or respond to routine client inquiries.
That's shallow work. It doesn't require deep, specialized skill. This thought experiment cuts through the ambiguity and helps you objectively label tasks so you know what to prioritize and protect the deep, and what to minimize or delegate the shallow.
Makes sense. Prioritize the tasks that require your unique, hard-earned skills. Now, what about just capping the total amount of work?
That's fixed schedule productivity. It's simple but powerful. Decide in advance what time you're going to finish work each day, say 5:03 over p.m., and make that time non-negotiable.
No working late just because stuff isn't done.
Exactly. You set the boundary first, and then you work backward from that deadline. This creates a sense of urgency, a scarcity mindset regarding your time.
Because you know the clock is ticking, you become much more ruthless about saying no to shallow requests or time-wasting activity.
Precisely. You're forced to ask, given I must finish by 5:30, what is the absolute highest value use of my remaining hours? Shallow stuff naturally gets squeezed out because there's simply no time for it.
The example was Professor Radhika Nagpal at Harvard, right? Using this to get tenure.
Yes. She imposed strict quotas on shallow activities like travel, committee work, even how many papers she'd review, all to protect her core research time within a fixed schedule. It forced her to prioritize ruthlessly.
Okay, fixed schedule forces prioritization. But there's a crucial piece needed to make this work psychologically, isn't there? Something about switching off.
Absolutely critical. It's the shutdown ritual. This tackles a known psychological quirk called the Zeigarnik effect.
Zeigarnik effect. That's the idea that unfinished tasks stick in your mind, right? They keep popping up, demanding attention, causing stress even when you're trying to relax.
Exactly. Your brain hates open loops. If you just walk away from your desk at 5:30 with a dozen half-finished things swirling in your head, you won't actually disconnect. That cognitive residue will follow you home.
So the shutdown ritual is designed to close those loops.
Precisely. Before you officially end your workday, you take a few minutes to systematically review every incomplete task, project, or goal. For each one, you confirm either A, you have a specific plan for when you'll tackle it next, written down, or B, it's captured reliably in your task management system where you know you'll revisit it.
So you're essentially telling your brain, it's okay, this isn't forgotten, there's a plan.
Yes. You assure your subconscious that everything is under control and will be handled. And then, crucially, you end the ritual with a consistent cue phrase, something simple like, shutdown complete.
And that phrase signals.
It signals to your brain that the workday is definitively over. The open loops are closed or captured. It gives you permission to fully disengage, allowing your mind to rest and recharge properly, making the fixed schedule sustainable. So, after this whole deep dive, where does it leave us? I think the core message comes back to something pretty fundamental. Committing to deep work, it's not about being morally superior or judging people who are distracted. It's really just a pragmatic choice. It's recognizing that the ability to truly concentrate is a skill a skill that gets valuable things done in the world.
Yeah, it's practical. It's about effectiveness. Like that story about Bill Gates and Paul Allen in the early days, hacking together the basic interpreter for the Altair computer.
Right. Allen apparently said that what really set Gates apart even then was his incredible focus. He'd work with such intensity that he'd literally fall asleep on the keyboard.
Wake up a few hours later and just pick up right where he left off.
Exactly. Allen called it a prodigious feat of concentration. That intense focus, that deep work built Microsoft.
But choosing this path, the deep life, it's not easy. It requires real effort, real changes in habits.
No doubt. You have to consciously leave behind the easy comforts of what the source calls artificial busyness. You have to resist the lure of constant social media posturing.
And it forces you to confront yourself, right? To maybe face the fact that your current best effort without deep focus, maybe it's not yet that good. Improvement requires that sustained, sometimes uncomfortable focus.
It does. It requires struggle. But the payoff, as we've seen from the economics, the neuroscience, the psychology, it's immense.
The conclusion really seems to be that if you're willing to do the hard work, to really struggle to use your mind to its absolute fullest potential, to create things that genuinely matter.
You don't just become more productive or more valuable economically. You actually find that depth generates a life rich with productivity and meaning. The process itself is rewarding.
The deep life isn't just lucrative, it's a life well lived.
So maybe the final thought to leave you with, the provocative question to mull over is this. Think about your own day. What's one small, maybe seemingly insignificant distraction that you habitually engage with? That one website you always flip to, that notification sound you always react to, that meeting you could probably decline.
Just one small thing.
What's one small change, one little system you could put in place today, right now, to eliminate or block just that one distraction, specifically to protect maybe just 30 minutes of uninterrupted deep work time tomorrow?
Just 30 minutes? That doesn't sound impossible.
It's not. But that protected 30 minutes, that could be the tiny first step towards cultivating your own 21st century superpower.